Hello, today's lecture is devoted to teaching grammar. So, key questions concerning teaching grammar are, so what is grammar? How do people learn grammar? And how can I analyze form, meaning, and use for teaching purposes? What are possible component parts of a grammar lesson? And how can I provide relevant input for learners? How can I help learners notice, understand, and memorize the language? And how can I help learners practice using the language? So, when you teach grammar, so you have to keep in your mind the following concepts. So first of all, what is grammar? So grammar is a combination of words with certain meaning. Grammar has forms and uses, for example, plural forms used in the past and so on. So grammar includes parts of speech, such as nouns, prepositions, exclamations, and so on. Their functions to name people, qualities, to show feeling, and also grammar has structures and forms, such as past continuous with, where, verb plus ing, and so on. So grammar uses to convey the meaning in the context. For example, I am talking now. So she's working on the project this week. We're having a party next weekend. So here we convey the context to make sure that our learners understand the meaning of this grammar. So grammar is also used unconsciously and is taught to describe the written language. For example, mother's care, I won't. So also you have to remember that grammar focuses on accuracy, sometimes without, errors. So teaching grammar. So when you teach grammar, you have to also bear in mind that learners need to have exposure to the new language and also to notice and understand the items being used. Also try to use the new language themselves in safe practice. And also they have to need to remember the things they have learned. So what are the presentation techniques? So with PPP, if you remember, in our previous lecture, we talked about presentation practice and the producing or production stages, where a teacher focuses on a target language, whether it is grammar or vocabulary of the English language, into a situation to convey the meaning, which we call it like situational presentation. The next technique is eliciting the language. So you have to write under the picture, for example, the words of countable and uncountable nouns, for example. Also teacher models, such as, I'd like, for example, some using quarrel drilling. For example, I'd like some chocolate. And so the students should repeat. And the next one is, controlled or restricted practice. You should give them some restricted or, semi-restricted or semi-controlled activities. And also teacher asks concept questions, which items are countable and uncountable. So talking about the concept checking questions, we have a lecture on this point, and therefore please in the future I will present the concept checking questions. So presentation stages. In the presentation stage, you remember that the ways of presenting a new language, whether it is grammar or vocabulary. And also please remember that you have MPF or MFP, which means meaning, pronunciation, and form, or meaning, form, pronunciation. For example, countable and uncountable nouns, such as chocolate, cake, ice cream, or lemonade, water, and so on. or you have to say that I'd like some a. Practice, do the exercise, for example, select countable and uncountable nouns, fill in gaps with a or some. And the next one is a producing stage, where you can ask your learners to role play, for example, a dialogue and so on. So we will move on with the, some strategies, and one of the strategies, that you have to keep in your mind is that learners learn a language item. They need to be exposed a lot of language while reading and listening. Therefore, the classroom activities should include lots of reading and listening. They should include realistic texts, which we call authentic texts, yes, a little above the apparent current language level of learners, so that learners are exposed to a lot of comprehensible new language. And studying in English-speaking countries will be good language exposure for students, as there are lots of opportunities to practice. If you don't have such an opportunity, you may give them some authentic, texts which can be adapted to the level of your learners, and therefore you can take it from the internet sources. Also, learners to notice specific items when they are being used, and in texts, for example, in stories or in conversation and so on. So teachers should provide texts, exercises, and the techniques that help learners notice specific items. Also, text specifically written for learners should be given during your lessons, such as containing multiple examples of a target language, which can be useful. And also, learners need to understand the form, meaning, and the use of an item. So form refers how the pieces fit together, the endings, and so on. So use refers to the typical situations, conversations, for example, context in which it might be used. So teachers should be informed about form, meaning, and the use of a language. So exercises, different activities, explanations, drills, for example, games, questions help to understand the form, meaning, and the use of a language in general. So in fact, learners try, they try to make the things out in a safe environment with limited other linguistic demands, and therefore learners to have opportunities to practice a new language. Teachers should give many opportunities to practice things in activities that can only for the restricted language when they speak and write with encouragement and feedback. So safe practice, restricted tasks should be given to your learners. So the next one is learners need to use the new language when speaking and writing to communicate in different contexts. So teachers should offer speaking and writing tasks that allow learners make use of all the languages they know, because our main aim in teaching is to help learners to apply and expose the language in real situations to communicate. And therefore, please make sure that you create real situations in your classroom. So learners need to remember items. So teachers should pay attention to learners' records items, return to items again and again with revision tasks. For example, today you have explained and presented the present simple tense, and the next class you have to come back again, so that they have to remember the meaning, the use of a language, and the form of present simple tense. So different practice activities and games, tasks are used in your teaching grammar classrooms. So grammar practice activities include the following. For example, splitting the sentences. If you touch the dog, it will bite you. For example, a conditional sentence. So here As you can see from this example, they have, this is splitted sentences and they have to match. So next activities are grammar quizzes and memory tests. So when you clarify, also, by the way, you have also picture dictation or on a certain, for example, grammar chunks or on a certain sentences, and also miming in action. Yes, for example, pulling something or pushing something. This is miming action. Also, growing stories when you start with some certain grammar, tenses or grammar, some points, and they have to also grow their own stories. Create their own stories. Also, questionnaires would be a really very good idea when they practice the following or the certain grammar points. So and regarding the clarification, so when you clarify, when you present, the following should be included. First, you have to explain. So explain means when you explain the rules, when you explain the meaning and the form. So explanation means when you tell the rules to the learners. So the next one is guided discovery. So teacher helps the learners to tell himself. For example, you give, if you remember, deductive and inductive approach, when you give the learners an opportunity to make out the rules by themselves. So this is, we call it guided discovery. You can use it, guided discovery, in teaching vocabulary as well. So, and the next one is self-directed discovery. The learner tells himself. Yes, so this is a really very good point when they have a chance to communicate in English in your classroom. So in short, these schemes will look like, teacher explanation, guided discovery, and self-guided discovery. So how do you explain the rules? So rules can be descriptive and pedagogic. So descriptive rules describe the regularity of grammar, how regular they use. So pedagogic rules give learners how to apply them. So according to, Swan, who is a really very good, I would say, linguist and also a pedagogue, gives the following, explanations. So rules should be true. They should depict truthfulness. And the rules should be limited. Rules should show what the limits are on the use of a given form. Will is used for future. How it is different from other ways of talking future. So going to, because will and going to is different. So the next one is rules can be clear. Will is used for spontaneous decisions, and the going to talking about future. In this case, you highlight the the meaning, the communicative meaning of a grammar. So the next one, rules should be simple. Keep them as simple as possible. There is a limited amount of exceptions that a learner can remember. And also, they should be familiar. Use familiar terms, for example, present, past, future, gerund, infinitive. Do not complicate, because learners cannot understand your, philological terms or linguistic some terms. And the next one, rules can be relevant. The rules should answer only those questions that learners need. And also, sometimes comparatively teaching is okay, but please remember that sometimes rules can be different from their language one. For example, if you are teaching to Kazakh language learners or Russian language learners, there are some differences, you can find it. And also, explanation consists of two stages: rules of form and rules of use in general. When you teach a language, whether it is grammar or lexis, this meaning, form, and the use and pronunciation are vital. And also please use deductive and inductive approaches depending on the language level of your learners. Also remember to have presentation practice in the production stages. Use timelines where possible. Then both grammar and lexis should be used frequently by learners and consolidated. You have to all the time consolidate. That means you have to, make sure that they remember the rules and the meaning of a, grammar or some lexical forms. And also grammar and the, lexis should be taught in context rather than isolated and with different approaches such as, task-based learning or, for example, project-based learning and so on. So reading and the listening, when you give lots of reading and the listening, because the receptive skills, they get lots of information, and within this, context of reading and the listening, they learn more and more grammar and lexis. And also vice versa, when they receive, they have to produce, something, and therefore speaking and writing tend to be as productive skills. So thank you.